Hi, I'm Dosia McKay. I am a composer, a painter, and a writer. And I would like to return to doing a vlog. It's maybe not a traditional vlog, but I just would like to have a conversation with some of you here on YouTube and maybe other outlets, and just maybe have a informal chat. And this is something I have tried in the past, but I have two problems. Problem number one is that I am a perfectionist, and the way I approached it in the past was very laborious, and I made a very convoluted intro and I had to edit it just so, and it had to be perfect, and I had to do a lot of cuts and a lot of takes, so it was extremely time consuming. And related to that, problem number one is that I don't have the time. I have so many things going on right now that just, to produce this perfect video with, not that my videos were perfect in the past, far from it, but I don't have the time to do the graphics, to do the intros, outros, and make it. There's a lot of really interesting people on YouTube who do it all the time, who do it full time and have the time to devote to producing something great. So I can tell you right away that this is not what I'm going to do at all. And there are composers out there who do just that. And if this is what you're looking for, then I'm sure you can find those videos very easily. But as far as what I would like to do right now is I just would like to stay in touch and maybe keep you updated about my projects and share a little bit about my creative process. And this is not going to be a teaching video at all. I'm not going to share 5 easy steps on how to do this or that, although I'll be probably throwing in some pieces of information, maybe some things that I do that work for me, and maybe you will find it helpful. If you do, great. So thank you for watching, and thank you for being here. So let's have a conversation. Let's have an informal chat. So I would like to tell you, first of all, about a project that I'm working on right now. I have just received, at the beginning of this year of 2019, I have received a wonderful commission from Kate Steinbeck and Pan Harmonia. Kate Steinbeck is the artistic director of a wonderful chamber music organization out of Asheville, North Carolina. And she has a really interesting set of musicians working with her, and she's doing concert mostly in the Western North Carolina. So go to panharmonia.org and pay her a visit and look at all the interesting chamber music events she's putting on. And I'm very lucky, very privileged that Kate has chosen me to compose work for the 20th anniversary of Pan Harmonia. And Kate Steinbeck has put on a contest for North Carolina women poets, and you can read more about that on her website and on my website. But to make the long story short, we have received many poems and have chosen 3 as a base of this very interesting commission. So I will be writing 3 art songs, and the instrumentation is Mezzo-Soprano, Flute, Bassoon, and classical guitar. A very lovely set of instruments, but not without its challenges, and I do want to talk about it because I want you to have maybe a little peek into my creative process, into my struggles, into the workings of classical composition. So I do want to talk about it, but before I do, I want to share with you a couple of things. very interesting developments. Well, first of all, just recently found out that my piece for string orchestra will be played by the Knoxville Symphony under the direction of Maestro Aram Demirjian. I hope I pronounce his name correctly, but if I didn't, please forgive me. So this will happen in the September of this year at the opening of the new season with Knoxville Symphony. Obviously, I'm very excited about it, especially since I have been back to Knoxville for about a year after 9-year break. This is where I spent quite a large chunk of my adult years, roughly 15 years. This is where I have done my undergraduate degrees in music composition, but then went away to New York to get my master's, spent roughly 3 years there, another 5 years in Asheville, North Carolina, another very short stint at Portland, Oregon, and now I'm back to Knoxville, which I very much consider my hometown, even though I was not born here because I was born and raised in Poland, but I have spent quite a large portion of my adult life here, so it kind of feels like this is my home. So I am back here in town, and it's very reassuring and just very exciting that Knoxville Symphony would play my music here. It's very meaningful. So thank you, Knoxville Symphony. Thank you, City of Knoxville, if you had anything to do with it, and thank you, Maestro Aram Demirjian, for choosing my music. So that's one thing. Another thing that's happening is it's very unexpected to me, but since last October, I have stepped into writing a novel. It's something very unexpected. I didn't quite plan it, but it has been at the back of my mind for quite a few years, but finally took a really strong hold of me, and this plot developed, and I just had to surrender and write it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to outline the novel and see how it goes and see if there's anything to it. So I outlined the novel, and then I thought, I'm just going to write the first chapter and see if I can even do that and see how it goes. And so I did that. And once I finished the first chapter, I just was completely just immersed in the story, and I just could not stop. So, long story short, I have written a psychological thriller whose main protagonist is not a big surprise, but the main protagonist is a composer. It's a young woman who has lost her faith in music, who has a very difficult lot in life, in the sense of that she's crippled with incredible bouts of anxiety, and that cripples her life, and she's having a really hard time finding herself, and she almost accidentally ends up at an artist retreat on a remote island on St. Lawrence River. And since this is a psychological thriller, let's just say that there are some strange events happening. Let me just put it that way without maybe revealing too much of the plot. So the novel has been out with my beta readers. I'm expecting to get the manuscripts back in the next 2 weeks or so. Then I already have spoken to a professional editor, so the next step will be editing the novel. I'm going to design the cover for the book, and hopefully we'll be publishing it. I'm not sure about spring, because these next few months will be very busy for me, but I'm thinking and hoping maybe summer or maybe early fall. I'll see how it goes. So very exciting projects happening for me right now. And now I would like to tell you a little bit more about the commission that I have mentioned earlier, the new composition I will be writing for Mezzo-Soprano, Flute, Bassoon, and guitar. And people usually want to know about the creative process, the compositional process, what it's like, how do I start, what's first, the harmony or the melody or maybe other considerations. And I don't really have a process, a uniform process that I utilize for every composition. I really find that I approach the music differently with every piece, depending on the structure of the piece, depending on the instrumentation, my idea for the music, and so forth. In this case, because I am setting existing poems to music, I already have a framework to work with, namely, and to state the obvious, the main framework is the poetry, are the words. So, although, as a composer, I am able to decide how to space the words, so to speak. The words are immovable. I mean, immovable in the sense that, in case of stanzas, here's the first stanza will happen here and the second stanza will happen here, and I cannot just, reverse them and shuffle the words around if, I become fanciful like that, because that's not my job to reshuffle the words. So I do have to follow the order of the words. So not only do I have to follow the order of the words, but I have to follow the intention of the poets. I feel that it's my duty to respect the text and set it to music in such a way that the original intent of the poet would be honored. So I spent quite a lot of time talking on the phone with the 3 poets selected, and we went over the poems in very detailed way, line by line, and I asked about their input, I asked about their thoughts. There are certain things in the poetry that might be obvious, but then I have learned a lot of things that the poets were thinking about as they were writing poetry. So I discovered new things, new thoughts that were hidden behind the text. But practically, on a very practical level, for me as a composer, what I was looking for as I was talking to the poets was the language describing emotion, because I want music to underpin those emotions. So let's say if there are lines in a poem that speak about longing, I'm not going to set the words to music in such a way that the music somehow portrays something humorous. That will be ludicrous to do it like that. Obviously, I have to honor the intent of the poet. So we spent a lot of time discussing individual words, individual lines, and I was taking detailed notes just to make sure that I was really going the right direction musically. So as far as my creative process, I'm definitely starting from understanding the words, understanding their rhythm, their emotion, the intents of the poets. And since I got a master's degree in film scoring, that education, that approach to writing music is very much ingrained in me. That is, that I am very respectful of the framework. So if we're talking about film, obviously the score is bound to the action on the screen, but in the case of setting words to music, I have a similar situation where I have a certain outline, a certain timeline during which the words are happening. And to use the language of film scoring, there are certain hit points that I need to underscore and I need to be aware of. So I have developed a structure that I am following in, and this is going to be maybe surprising to some of you, because we are talking about creativity and inspiration and all these things, and obviously we need that, and we need those inspired moments, but I am very fond of spreadsheets. So I do have a specific spreadsheet that I have prepared for the poems, where I have gathered all the lines of text and I have allocated them time-wise into my timeline. So I have the words on one line, and on another line I have my Mezzo-Soprano, I have flute, I have bassoon and guitar. And now, as I understand the poetry, now the decisions have to happen. Okay, where do the instruments come in? Obviously, I don't want every single instrument playing the whole time from beginning to end. This would be utterly boring. But I have to somehow apportion each instrument at the right time to underscore the emotions, but also make it interesting to the listener in such a way so that it happens organically, it happens naturally. One instrument weaves in, another instrument weaves out. There may be 2 or 3 instruments playing at the same time, and I want to make it organic, but it's not going to happen by chance. I have to spend a lot of time designing the timeline and planning my spreadsheet to make it effortless. As somebody once said, it takes a lot of effort to sound effortless. So this is what I have been doing, and this has been one of the challenges, just to set the timeline. So I have been talking to the poets, obviously, about the words, and I have talked to, of course, in the very beginning, I have talked to Kate Steinbeck, who has commissioned the music, and I have asked her what she wants her music to be. We talked a little bit about the style of music. She has given me a lot of freedom to write the kind of music that I feel is appropriate for this setting. But of course, I was listening to her ideas as well, and she wanted a very colorful piece. Something that would be, shall we say, pleasing to the ear, but also maybe with a little dash of dissonance at appropriate moments. And as I understand it, Kate Steinbeck's and Pan Harmonia's audience is very diverse. She takes her music to different audiences. She plays in art galleries, but she also plays in schools and she plays in prisons. So I think as a composer, I have to be mindful who is going to hear the music. I feel that it's appropriate for this piece to make the music, yes, challenging, because I am not writing pop music, but I am writing art music, and we want to produce something that hopefully, if I might express such hope, I would like the music to be timeless, but at the same time, I feel that I need to honor Kate and honor her audience and make the music accessible, and something that would, as I spoke before, honor the words and also express the emotion of the poems and bring the music to very sophisticated people and also people who maybe don't listen to classical music on classical. That's a whole another story. Classical or let's say art or avant-garde music. So all this to say, I think I will have more consonance than dissonance in this particular piece. So I spoke to Kate. In the beginning, we talked about the style, but then I took my time to really listen to the players. I spoke to the Mezzo-Soprano, spoke to Kate as a flutist because Kate is going to play the flute, and spoke to the bassoon player and guitar player. And a couple of observations about that. Well, first of all, and that surprised me, that as I spoke to them, they were very appreciative of me reaching out, as if it was a unique for a composer to reach out to the players and ask them about the specifics of their instruments, which made me think that maybe we composers are not really good about listening to the players. I don't know. I don't want to maybe, go out on the limb. I'm not going to, make comments about every composer as if we were a uniform body of composers. That's obviously not true. But let me just leave it at that they were appreciative and almost surprised that I wanted to talk about certain technicalities of their instruments and their input as far as, the challenges that they maybe have faced with other composers previously and what were their expectations as far as the idiomatic playing for their instrument, and just to give me sort of a list of things that maybe I should avoid or things to consider. So I'm very glad that I took my time in speaking to the players, because I have learned, even though I have studied about instruments, different instruments before, and I have played quite a few of them myself, but it was very interesting for me to learn new things as I spoke to them. So I'm not going to list all the aspects that we discussed, but once again, it became very clear to me that I need to be mindful of the ranges of instruments. And obviously, you have a certain range, and beyond the range, the instrument either doesn't play or it's very difficult to play. That's not even what I'm talking about. This is so basic that, obviously you have to know that. But as I started looking at these 4 instruments, 3 instruments and a voice, and I made a diagram for myself, and I thought, okay, here's the range of the bassoon, and here's the range of the guitar, which is a bit narrower and rests somewhere, in this kind of bass spectrum, and here's the voice, kind of a little bit above that, and here's the flute, and what is kind of the optimal space for each one of them to exist, to complement each other, but not really clash. And those are really interesting things to discover, and it's very easy to let them clash. And this is something that I'm really trying to avoid as I'm writing the piece. And I will tell you right now that the most challenging thing for me right now is I'm finding that mezzo-soprano is clashing with the flute. And maybe not the word clashing is not the ideal word, but they inhabit very similar range. Well, that's not quite true because the flute goes so much higher than the soprano, but as I write, I want to give the mezzo-soprano room, and this is something that we have discussed in detail with the singer, that she really wanted me to make sure not to crowd her in the sense of this is her ideal range, and she asked me not to put other instruments very close to her, because the instruments will naturally cover her, and we don't, obviously she's going to be a soloist, we don't want to cover her sound. And she said she had an experience in which she was singing a piece where the clarinet was very close to her range, and maybe other instruments were like, you know, playing in thirds with her, and she was not, the voice was just not coming through because there wasn't enough space for her to shine, to be heard. So these are the challenges, and you know, maybe not difficulties, but things to remember, things to consider as I write. And I think this is where I'm going to stop right now. I think I would like to keep you updated as I go. This is a very exciting process for me, obviously. If you have seen my previous videos, you know that every composition that I write is exciting to me because, hey, you know, it is. I mean, this is what I do. I do it because I love it, and I love the music. I love the music that I write, and I love collaborating with other players and singers. And so, yes, I love the new piece. I have a very solid draft, the first draft of the very first song. I'm not able to give you any more details, but this is where I stand right now. Things are going good. So this is what I would like to continue my informal talks, to keep you updated about the piece, maybe keep you updated about my creative process. And if you don't mind me being a little bit informal, because as I mentioned before, I don't really have the time to make the video perfect, and I can't cut it to pieces and edit because I simply don't have the time. But I would like to stay in touch, and I have heard from a few of you who told me that these videos are somehow helpful to you, or and if they are, I'm happy that this is the case. So till next time, stay creative, stay in touch, and I'll talk to you next time.